Berlin, April 1943. Inside the Reich Chancellery, Adolf Hitler paced as intelligence reports piled up on his desk. These were not battlefield updates. They were numbers, cold, mechanical figures that described something more terrifying than Allied armies. The reports claimed the United States was producing one 4-engine heavy bomber every single hour. Not per day, not per week. Every hour. German intelligence officers insisted the figures were real. Diplomats in Mexico confirmed them. Engineers who had seen American factories whispered the same warning. Even intercepted trade data told the same story. Hitler dismissed it as fantasy. Hermann Goering laughed it off. To them, it was Jewish propaganda. Mathematics weaponized against belief. But this was not propaganda. It was the moment the war was already lost, on paper, long before it was lost on the battlefield.
By early 1943, Nazi Germany still believed the war could be stabilized. Stalingrad was a disaster, but not yet fatal. What truly frightened Germany's intelligence services was not the Red Army. It was the United States. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence organization, led by Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, began compiling production estimates from neutral countries. Reports flowed in from Mexico City, Lisbon, Stockholm, and Bern, cities where German diplomats and spies quietly observed American shipping data, aircraft deliveries, and industrial contracts. Every report contradicted Nazi assumptions. The Americans were not mobilizing slowly. They were mobilizing at a scale Germany had never imagined possible. Factories were not being converted. They were being built from scratch. Entire industrial towns appeared almost overnight. The most alarming figure came from Michigan, a single plant producing B-24 Liberator bombers at a rate that defied European logic. When Canaris analysts calculated the output, they hesitated before submitting the final number. One bomber every hour. They knew what it meant. If the number was real, Germany could not win, no matter how well it fought.
The intelligence reports all pointed to one place, Willow Run, near Detroit. Built by the Ford Motor Company in just over a year, Willow Run was not a factory by European standards. It was an industrial weapon. The building stretched nearly 1 mile long, all under a single roof. At one end, raw aluminum arrived. At the other, finished B-24 bombers rolled directly onto a runway. This was not craftsmanship. It was industrial warfare. By mid-1943, production had reached its peak rhythm. Every 63 minutes, a completed Liberator exited the line. Workers did not build planes individually. They performed single tasks thousands of times per day. Rivets, wiring, engines, control surfaces, each motion reduced to seconds. German engineers who later studied Willow Run admitted something chilling. Germany had optimized quality. America had optimized quantity and sustainability. The Reich could destroy aircraft factories. It could not destroy an entire continent functioning as one machine.
When the intelligence summaries reached Hitler and Goering, the reaction was immediate and fatal. They rejected the numbers. Nazi ideology taught that America was racially divided, politically weak, and incapable of sustained effort. German leadership evaluated U.S. production using German limitations, coal shortages, skilled labor constraints, and fuel scarcity. They could not conceive a nation with unlimited oil, massive domestic steel reserves, protected coastlines, and an untouched industrial base. Worse still, German officers knew telling the truth carried risk. Intelligence numbers were quietly reduced. Estimates were softened. No one wanted to be the man who insisted the enemy was unbeatable. By late 1943, Germany had the correct data and still chose denial. This was not an intelligence failure. It was a leadership failure. And by the time Allied bombers darkened European skies in 1944, the consequences of that denial became impossible to hide.
German planners often dismissed the Willow Run figures with a single argument: production alone does not win wars. And on paper they were correct. Aircraft required crews. Crews required training. Training required fuel, food, spare parts, airfields, instructors, and time. This was the gap Germany believed would slow the Americans, perhaps fatally. But intelligence officers who looked deeper saw something worse. The United States was not merely producing bombers, it was producing systems. Pilot training schools expanded across Texas, Arizona, Florida, and California. Navigators, gunners, and mechanics were trained in parallel, not sequence. Fuel consumption figures, once considered impossible, were sustained by uninterrupted oil flows from Texas and California. German intelligence intercepts revealed that American planners assumed enormous losses and built replacements into the equation from the start. Germany trained men to conserve resources. America trained industry to absorb loss. By the time Berlin realized this distinction, the equation was already complete.
The core failure was not disbelief, it was projection. German analysts calculated American production by first estimating what Germany could produce with American resources. This single assumption corrupted every forecast that followed. Germany lacked domestic oil. The U.S. sat on oceans of it. Germany depended on rail lines vulnerable to bombing. The U.S. relied on protected internal transport. Germany dispersed factories to survive. America concentrated them to maximize efficiency. Worse still, intelligence reports were filtered upward through a political system that punished pessimism. Numbers were quietly halved. Output projections softened. Reality was reshaped to match expectation. By early 1944, even senior officers privately admitted the truth. The United States was not constrained by the same limits as Europe. But official estimates still claimed America would eventually slow. It never did.
Another belief sustained German denial: the idea that America's strength would be divided. German leadership assumed that fighting in Europe and the Pacific would halve U.S. output in each theater. Intelligence officers knew better. Shipping manifests showed something different. The United States was exporting war. Bombers to Britain, tanks to North Africa, trucks to the Soviet Union, food everywhere. American industry was not split, it was scaled. Even more alarming was the consistency. Month after month, production did not fluctuate. There were no seasonal drops, no visible shortages, no signs of strain. German intelligence concluded that American planners had solved something Europe never had: long-duration industrial warfare. By mid-1944, internal memoranda acknowledged a grim reality. The United States could fight a two-front war indefinitely. Germany could not.
By the time Allied bombers appeared in the numbers predicted by those early intelligence reports, disbelief turned to inevitability. Hundreds became thousands, then thousands became routine. Luftwaffe commanders recognized the pattern immediately. These were not raids meant to terrorize. They were industrial extermination campaigns, designed to return again and again without pause. German aircraft production rose in 1944, but it no longer mattered. Trained pilots were gone, fuel was scarce, airfields were cratered faster than they could be repaired. The truth Germany had refused to believe was now visible from the ground. The war had not been lost because America built one bomber every hour. It was lost because Germany believed such a thing could never be true.
Modern viewers often ask a fair question. Even if Germany had believed the intelligence, could anything have changed? In purely material terms, the answer is no.
Germany lacked oil, aluminum, and strategic depth. It had no four-engine bomber capable of reaching North America. There was no scenario in which the Reich could outproduce the United States. But belief was not about winning. It was about choosing how to lose. Had Germany accepted the numbers in 1942 or early 1943, strategy might have shifted away from attritional air defense and toward negotiated exit, consolidation, or limited war aims. Instead, leadership pursued total victory long after arithmetic made it impossible. Denial locked Germany into maximum destruction with minimum leverage. The refusal to believe did not cause defeat, it magnified it.
By 1944, German and Japanese leadership shared a silent understanding. Victory was no longer attainable. What remained was a gamble. Both regimes placed their final hopes on the same assumption, that if the United States could be made to bleed enough, public opinion would demand negotiation. It was not a military strategy, it was a political bet. Germany concentrated on defensive weapons, jet fighters, and miracle technologies. Japan sought a decisive naval battle and later embraced suicidal tactics. Neither approach addressed the underlying imbalance. American losses mounted, but production erased them faster than Axis planners believed possible. This was not desperation born of ignorance. It was desperation born of delay. The longer denial lasted, the fewer options remained.
As Allied forces advanced into Europe, German engineers finally saw American production firsthand, not through reports, but through wreckage. Downed bombers were examined, manufacturing tolerances were noted, repair manuals were standardized, replacement parts were interchangeable across factories thousands of miles apart. This level of uniformity shocked German technicians. What Willow Run represented was not just speed, but repeatability. Aircraft were designed to be lost and replaced without pause. One German officer later summarized the realization simply: "We were fighting men. They were fighting time." By then, belief no longer mattered. The sky itself had become proof. The intelligence truth Nazi Germany refused to believe was never a secret. It arrived in reports. It appeared in shipping manifests. It was visible in factory skylines and airfield expansion. The failure was not information, but acceptance. By the time Allied bombers dominated European skies, the war had already been decided by production schedules written years earlier in American boardrooms and government offices. When historians say World War II was won by industry, Willow Run stands as the clearest example. Not because it built one bomber every hour, but because Germany could not accept that such a thing was possible.
By late 1944, Germany's internal reports changed tone. The language of optimism disappeared, replaced by bureaucratic bluntness. Aircraft loss reports were no longer framed as temporary setbacks. Fuel allocations were slashed, not as conservation measures, but as admissions of scarcity. Pilot training hours were reduced, sometimes to mere weeks, because fuel simply did not exist. What made these documents remarkable was not what they said, but what they assumed. Allied air superiority was permanent. No counteroffensive was planned to reverse it. No production surge was expected to offset it. The numbers had finally forced themselves into policy. Years earlier, similar figures had been dismissed as exaggeration. Now they were accepted without debate. The truth had not changed. Only the cost of denying it had.
While Germany struggled to adjust to reality, American planners had approached the war from a different premise entirely.
They did not ask how to win a single campaign. They asked how to fight continuously, for years, across oceans. U.S. production targets were deliberately excessive. Loss rates were assumed to be catastrophic. Replacement schedules were written before combat began. This was not optimism, it was insurance. Factories like Willow Run were built with failure in mind. Bombers were expected to be shot down. Crews were expected to be lost. The system was designed to endure that loss without slowing. German intelligence understood production numbers. What it underestimated was intent. America was not reacting to the war. It had reorganized itself to absorb it.
After the war, Allied and Axis analysts alike returned to Willow Run, not as a curiosity, but as a case study. Other factories produced aircraft. Some even approached similar output for short periods. What made Willow Run different was consistency. Hour after hour, day after day, month after month. There were no heroic surges, no dramatic peaks, just relentless repetition. For German officers reviewing post-war documents, this was the final revelation. The Reich had focused on weapons. America had focused on process. Willow Run was not impressive because it was large. It was decisive because it never stopped. History often labels Germany's failure as one of intelligence. That is only partly true. The Abwehr collected accurate data. Diplomats reported honestly. Engineers warned clearly. The failure occurred after the information arrived. Leadership rejected numbers that contradicted ideology. Estimates were reshaped to fit belief. Reality was treated as negotiable. This is why Willow Run matters. Not because it built one bomber every hour, but because it proved that wars can be decided by whether leaders accept facts when they are still inconvenient, rather than when they are undeniable. By the time Germany believed the truth, belief no longer mattered.
When the war ended, German officers finally spoke without consequence. In post-war interrogations and memoirs, the same theme surfaced repeatedly. Not surprise at defeat, but recognition delayed too long. Many admitted they had seen the production figures early. Some had even believed them. What they had underestimated was not American machinery, but American persistence. The bombers never stopped coming. Even after catastrophic losses, formations returned unchanged in size. There was no visible exhaustion, no pause to regroup. The rhythm remained constant. For men trained to think in terms of shortages, this was incomprehensible. The war, they realized too late, had been decided by a nation that treated endurance as a resource.
World War II transformed the meaning of power. Before it, victory had been measured in divisions, battleships, and generals. After it, power was measured in throughput, how fast a society could replace what was destroyed. Willow Run was not an exception. It was the clearest demonstration of a principle that reshaped warfare permanently. The factory became a front line. The assembly line became a weapon. German intelligence had identified this shift. German leadership had rejected it. This distinction, not technology, not courage, not even strategy, defined the outcome.
Germany's refusal to accept reality did not prolong hope. It prolonged destruction. Cities were flattened, defending airspace that could not be held. Pilots were sent into combat without fuel or training. Resources were consumed chasing reversals that mathematics had already ruled out. Acceptance might not have changed the outcome, but it could have changed the scale of ruin. The tragedy was not losing the war. It was refusing to understand it while understanding still mattered.
Modern military planners still study Willow Run, not for nostalgia, but for warning.
Wars between industrial powers are decided early, often before the first shot is fired. They are decided by logistics, energy, training capacity, and political willingness to sustain loss. Intelligence matters, but only if leadership is willing to hear it. This lesson outlived the bombers, the factories, and even the war itself.
Nazi Germany did not lose World War II because America built one bomber every hour. It lost because its leaders could not accept that such a thing was possible. The intelligence was correct, the warning was clear, the denial was fatal. Willow Run did not end the war, but it proved that in modern conflict, belief cannot outrun arithmetic. And once numbers turn against you, no amount of ideology can bring the sky back under control.